everyone, welcome to Cbse's first personalized chapter model tuition. Yes, so today we are gonna discuss some exam special material which is gonna help you for your exam. Okay, so we'll discuss some questions which is very important from our chapter 7, that is how do organisms reproduce. Okay. So first we're gonna see multiple choice questions. And the first question is, in which of the following the characters transmitted from parents to offspring are present? So the first option is cytoplasm. So you all know that cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance which is present in our cell, right? Where we can see all the cell organelles and all. So obviously that answer is wrong. Now next one is ribosome. Again, it is a cell organelle which is referred to as a protein factory of the cell. So that answer is also wrong. And Golgi body, which is involved in the packaging modification and all. Okay, so that is also a wrong answer. And it is gene. Okay, that is the genetic material. Okay, so our genetic material DNA and the functional unit of DNA we call it as gene, which is responsible for the transmission of this hereditary characters or traits. Okay, so answer D is the correct answer. And the second question is, the number of chromosome in parents and offsprings of a particular species remains constant due to. So how is the number of chromosomes in the parents and offspring remaining constant? Is it because of doubling of chromosome after zygote formation? That is wrong. Okay. Next is halving of chromosome during gamete formation. Yes, that is the answer, right? So during the gamete formation, you all know that in the male gamete, which is sperm, there will be 23 chromosome, and in case of egg cell of the female, there will be 23 chromosome. Okay, and its fusion will lead to the regaining of 46 chromosome in the offspring. Okay, so halving of chromosome during gamete formation. It is during the gamete formation that this halving is taking place, which we call as meiosis or the reduction division. So option B is the correct answer over here. Okay, that is halving of the chromosome during gamete formation. And the other options are doubling of chromosome after gamete formation. Okay, so after gamete formation, if doubling is happening during fusion or fertilization, there will be a change in the chromosome number. And option D given as halving of chromosome after gamete formation. Again, that is not the correct answer. Okay, so option B is the correct answer over here. And the third question is, length of pollen tube depends on the distance between. So the option A is pollen grain and the upper surface of stigma. Okay, that's wrong answer. And the option B is pollen grain on the upper surface of the stigma and the ovule. Yes, that is the correct answer. You all know that the pollen grain come and falls in the female part called as stigma, and from there the pollen tube will be coming and it will be reaching the ovule, right? So the length of the pollen tube, it depends on the pollen grain that is there on the surface of the stigma and the ovule. So option B is the correct answer. And the option C given here is pollen grain in the anther and the upper surface of the stigma. That is wrong. And upper surface of stigma and lower part of the stem. Again, that is wrong. Okay. So the length of pollen tube, it depends on the upper surface of the stigma and the ovule. Okay. So that is the correct answer. That is option B is the correct answer. Now, like question 4 is, pollination between different flowers of the same plant is called as option A autogamy, option B gitnogamy, and option C xenogamy, and option D allogamy. Okay, so option B gitnogamy is the correct answer. Okay, so pollination between different flowers of the same plant. Okay, so in a same plant, if there is two different flowers and if pollination is happening between them, we call it as gitnogamy. Okay, so option B is the correct answer over here. And the fifth question is, Sertoli cells are involved in. Okay, so excretion, obviously no, it is not involved in excretion. Then option B, respiration, again it is no. And option C, nutrition of sperm. Okay, so option C is the correct answer. So Sertoli cells is something that is related with the reproductive organs and all. Okay. Then the question number 6 is, the ability of a cell to divide into several cells during reproduction in plasmodium is called. We all know that it is in plasmodium where we can see multiple fission, where the parent organism undergo multiple division and it bursts and multiple organism or multiple offsprings are being released. Okay, so this happens in case of plasmodium, and we all know that the plasmodium is a causative organism of malaria, and this is important. Okay. Now the question number 7 is, In a potato, vegetative propagation take place by. So in case of potato, you all know that potato is a tuber. Okay. So in case of potato, vegetative propagation take place through stem tuber. Okay. So option C is correct answer in case of seventh question. Okay. It's not root, it's not leaf, it's not grafting. Okay. So correct answer is stem tuber in case of potato. And the eighth question is the process of release of egg from the ovary is called menstruation. It is a process where the unfertilized egg is removed from the female body. Reproduction, you all know, it is the production of the offsprings. Again, no. Insemination, it is a transfer of sperm. No, again, no. And ovulation, yes, that is the correct answer. Okay, the process through which eggs are released from the ovary, we call it as ovulation. So for the eighth question, option D is the correct answer. That is ovulation is the correct answer. Now, the ninth question is which among the following diseases is not sexually transmitted? So, syphilis, it is sexually transmitted. HIV/AIDS, it is sexually transmitted. Gonorrhea, it is sexually transmitted. And the only disease which is not sexually transmitted is hepatitis A. Okay, so you guys may get confused between this hepatitis, like you might have heard, yes, this is a sexually transmitted disease and all. It is hepatitis B, which is sexually transmitted. Okay, hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. Over here, the answer given is hepatitis A. Okay, the option given is hepatitis A. So the correct answer will be hepatitis A. Okay, that is the disease which is not sexually transmitted. All others are sexually transmitted. So option B is the correct answer for ninth question. Now we are moving to fill in the blanks questions. And the 10th question is process of fertilization take place in the dash tube in human. So fertilization, that is a fusion of male and female gamete. Okay, the process of fusion of male and female gamete take place in the fallopian tube or the oviduct. And dash is the term used to refer to the commencement of menstruation at puberty. So the first menstruation, we call it as menarche. Okay, menarche is the first menstruation and the last one is menopause. Now we are moving to the short answer type question. And the 12th question under short answer type question is name the information source of making protein in the cell. State two basic events in reproduction. And this is an important question. Okay, question will be asked which are the two basic events in the reproduction. So it is important. So DNA in the cell nucleus is the information source of making protein. Okay, so which protein has to be like made in our body, which has to be released in our body? All this information will be there in the DNA. Okay, deoxyribonucleic acid is what DNA is. So all this information will be there in the DNA. And the two basic events in reproduction is creation of a DNA copy. Okay, a new DNA copy is being produced and additional cellular apparatus by the cell involved in the process. Okay, so when the cell is dividing, what happened? A new cell apparatus is formed as well as our DNA is also formed. So these are the two basic events in case of reproduction. And the 13th question is variation that confer an advantage to an individual organism only will survive in a population justified. So the answer is it is because the chance of survival depends on the nature of variation and different individuals have different kind of advantages. For example, a bacteria that can withstand heat will survive better in a heat wave. That is, organisms that are fit in the competitive environment and with great variation will be able to survive and adapt. Thus, more offspring and population with genetic variation will be surviving. Okay. So we all know that it's a survival of fittest, isn't it? So when there is a competition, whoever is performing in a better way, they'll be the winner, right? So obviously, in case of our environment also, it is survival of the fittest. Okay, so when there is adverse condition or when the environment is challenging, whoever can withstand that challenges and can fight back to the environment, they will only be surviving. Okay, that is the survival of fittest. Okay, so it is because the change of survival depends on the nature's variation. Okay, so variation is an advantage and it will be helping the individual in order to survive in a population. And the 14th question is name one sexually transmitted disease, each caused due to bacterial infection and viral infection, and how can these be prevented? So sexually transmitted diseases caused due to bacterial infection is gonorrhea and the viral infection is AIDS, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And these diseases can be prevented by responsible sexual behavior such as using condoms during sexual intercourse. So this is important. Okay, this is important and this is a previous year question. So this is very, very important. And this is a direct question from the textbook. Every question is direct, but this is like we know the answer, right? We have studied this infinite number of times, so this is important, and this is a previous year question. And the 15th question is, in the human body, what is the role of seminal vesicle and prostate gland? Again, this is a previous year question and important. Okay, you will get questions from this male reproductive part, female reproductive part, and all. And there's a B part for the question, that is list two function performed by testes in human being. So the role of seminal vesicle and prostate gland are as follows. Seminal vesicle will be producing seminal plasma, which is in the form of fluid, and that will be making the transport of sperm smoother. Okay, so the transport of sperm will be made smooth with the secretions of the seminal vesicle, and the prostate gland will be secreting prostatic fluid that will be helping the sperm, or it will be keeping the sperm alive and help them to swim vigorously. So it is this prostatic fluid which will be keeping the sperms alive and which help them to swim vigorously. And the two function that is performed by testes in human being are as follow, that is formation of sperm. It take place in testes and they secrete the hormone testosterone which regulates the formation of sperm, and it brings change in appearance of boys at the time of puberty. Okay, so testis, it produces or it secretes a hormone called as testosterone, which will be regulating the formation of sperm, and it will be bringing changes in the appearance of boy during the time of puberty. And the 16th question is, list any four reason for vegetative propagation being practiced in growth of some type of plants. So vegetative propagation, it is cheaper and easier and more rapid method of propagation in plants than growing plants from their seeds, and better quality of plants can be maintained by this method, and it results in the propagation of those plants which do not produce viable seeds or produce seeds with prolonged period of dormancy, and the plant generated from vegetative means are more uniform and genetically similar to the parent stock. Okay, so this is the answer and this is important. Okay, so there is many advantages of performing this vegetative propagation and producing plants. Okay, so it is really cheaper and very easier and a convenient method, and better quality of plants can be maintained by using this method. Okay, and like the plants generated from vegetative means are more uniform. Okay, they'll be alike and genetically similar to the parent stock. Okay, they'll be genetically similar to the parent stock as well. And the 17th question is, state one genetically different feature between sperm and egg of human and what is its consequence. Again, this is a previous year question. Okay, so sex chromosome of human male is XY. A sperm of human male carries either X chromosome and one Y chromosome. Okay, so the sperm will be carrying either X or Y chromosome, but in case of human female, they will be carrying only X chromosome. Okay, so if the X chromosome, that is the sperm that is carrying X chromosome, is fusing with the egg cell, it will lead to the formation of a girl baby. On the other hand, if the sperm carrying Y chromosome is fusing with the egg cell, it will lead to the formation of male baby. So if a sperm that is carrying X chromosome fertilizes an egg which carry X chromosome, then the child born will be girl. And if a sperm carrying Y chromosome fertilizes an egg which carries X chromosome, then the child born will be a boy. And the 18th question is, how does growing embryo get nutrition from the mother's blood? So the embryo gets nutrition from the mother's blood with the help of a special tissue called as placenta. So placenta is a temporary organ that is formed during the time of pregnancy, and it is this placenta which is providing all the nourishment to the growing baby or the fetus. So this is a disc which is embedded in the uterine wall and transfer glucose and oxygen from the mother to the embryo. Okay, so all the nutrition or all the nourishment that the fetus required during the time of development is provided by the placenta from the mother's body. And the 19th question is, define the term puberty. List two changes observed in girls at the time of puberty. And the answer is the period when the rate of general body growth began to slow down and reproductive tissue began to mature. We call it as puberty. And the two changes observed in girls at the time of puberty is the breast size will begin to increase and menstruation will be starting at that time. Okay, so puberty is a time where the normal, like all the cells in the body, their growth will be a bit slower, and the changes in the reproductive tissue will be more evident or prominent. Okay, and the changes that is observed in girls during the time of puberty is the change in the size of the breast, and menstruation will start during this time. And the 20th question is, what is meant by asexual reproduction? List its any two different forms. So asexual reproduction is a process of producing new organism from a single parent without the involvement of sex cells. Fission and fragmentation are two different forms of asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction means only one single parent is involved in case of asexual reproduction, and there are 6 different methods that is involved under asexual reproduction, which is very important, and from this part a question is sure. Okay, so from any of that question will be coming, so you shouldn't skip this asexual reproduction part. It's very important. Now we are moving to the long answer type question, and the 21st question is, what is fertilization? Distinguish between external fertilization and internal fertilization. And the answer is, fertilization is defined as a fusion of male gamete with the female gamete to form a zygote during sexual reproduction, and it can happen externally and internally. So external fertilization means if the fusion of the male and female gamete take place outside the female body, we call it as external fertilization, and large number of gametes are released into the surrounding medium where the fertilization take place. It requires the presence of water for the sperm to be able to unite with the egg, and organisms that use external fertilization must live either in water or return to water for reproduction. A large number of eggs and sperms are needed. Example is bony fish, amphibian, most of the algae. So external fertilization means the fusion of male and female gamete take place outside the body of the female. And in case of external fertilization, large number of gametes are required. Okay, and they also require water for this fusion of male and female gamete, and if the organism is living in the land, they have to return to water for this. Okay, for the external fertilization, they have to return back to the water. Okay, so as this egg and sperm is released in a water body, okay, which is a very volatile condition. Okay, see, water current will be there, so there are chances that this egg and sperm may go away or may wash away with this water current, and some organism may feed on this, so it is an extremely dangerous condition. So a large number of eggs and sperms are needed, okay, because the chances of survival is very less. Now, internal fertilization, it occurs inside the body of the female, and the male gametes are deposited in the body of the female with the help of a copulatory organ, and water is not needed for fertilization to occur, and animals that have internal fertilization have completely transitioned to life on land, and the number of gamete produced is less. Example is reptile, birds, mammal, bryophyte, and tracheophyte. So internal fertilization, unlike external fertilization, the fusion of male and female gamete take place inside the body of the female. Okay, take place inside the body of the female, and water is not needed for fertilization. Okay, in case of internal fertilization, water is not needed, and as this is happening inside the body of the female, okay, the chances of survival is very high. Okay, there is no one that is going to come and attack inside the body of the female, right? So the number of gametes produced will be really less. So that's all about internal and external fertilization. Now the 22nd question is, define the term unisexual and bisexual, giving one example of each. So unisexual is a plant whose flower contain either stamen or carpel or pistil. Okay, carpel or pistil, both are correct. And bisexual means it contains both stamen and pistil. Example is hibiscus and mustard. An example for unisexual flower is papaya and watermelon. So this is very important previous year question. Okay, every year a question will be asked from this part. Okay, so unisexual, uni means what? One. Okay, so the plant will be having either male or female part. We call it as unisexual. Bisexual means it will be having both male and female part, is called as bisexual. Now the 23rd question is, explain the term implantation, placenta. What is the average duration of human pregnancy? So implantation means the embedding of a fertilized mammalian egg into the inner thick wall of the uterus where it will continue its development, is called as implantation. Okay. So the embryo has to be attached to the uterine wall where it continues its further development. So that is called as implantation, where the embryo gets embedded into the uterine wall. We call it as implantation. And placenta, it is a complex double-layered spongy vascular tissue in human female that is formed by the joint activity of maternal and fetal tissues in the wall of uterus, that is meant for attachment, nourishment, and waste disposal for the fetus. So placenta, it is a connection between the fetus and the mother, which helps in providing nourishment to the growing fetus and all. Now, what is the average duration of human pregnancy? So the average duration of human pregnancy is 40 weeks or 280 days. And the 24th question is, write the full form of DNA, name the part of the cell where it is located, explain its role in the process of reproduction of the cell. So the answer is, the full form of DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, and it is a genetic material that is found in the chromosome which are present in the nucleus of a cell, and the role of DNA in the process of reproduction of the cell. Okay. DNA plays an important role in reproduction of a cell, and the reproducing cell produces an identical copy of DNA through some cellular mechanism. And since the newly formed copy of DNA lacks an organized cellular structure, the cell gets divided to provide cell cover to the newly formed DNA. Thus, two daughter cells are formed from a single cell as a result of DNA copying. Okay. So what is the full form of DNA? It is deoxyribonucleic acid, and we all know that inside our cell there is nucleus, and inside nucleus we can see chromosome where we can see our DNA, inside which we can see our DNA. Okay, and explain its role in the process of reproduction of the cell. Okay, so it is this DNA which carries this hereditary information which is carried out from one generation to another. Okay, so when a cell has been divided and two new cells are formed, okay, a new copy of DNA is formed. Okay, a new copy of DNA is formed when a cell is dividing and two new daughter cells are formed. Okay, it involves a copying of DNA. Okay, that is how the hereditary information has been transmitted from one generation to another. Okay. Now the 25th question is, expand AIDS and list any four methods of prevention of AIDS. So AIDS stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and four methods of prevention or control of AIDS are as follows. Using condom during sex, avoiding sharing of needles, okay, and surgical needles and all, okay, we shouldn't share. Then test blood for AIDS before transfusion. Okay, at times when there is emergency, we go for this blood transfusion and all. So we have to check, okay, if it is hospital, the blood will be already checked, okay, but still we have to check, or we have to test the blood for AIDS before transfusion. Okay, we have to check it. Yes. Then avoiding sexual contact with unknown person, multiple partners and all, we have to avoid. So these are the methods through which we can prevent or control AIDS. 26th question is, list any four reasons for adopting contraceptive methods. And if a woman is using copper T, will it help in protecting her from sexually transmitted diseases? Why? So, four reasons for adopting contraceptive methods are to increase the gap between two children. So, if a couple is feeling like they need a certain gap, certain age gap between two children, they can use this method. And to prevent unwanted pregnancy, they can go for this method. And to prevent the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases or venereal diseases, and to control the population growth also, they can go for this method. And if a woman is using copper T, it will not help in protecting her from sexually transmitted diseases. Copper T prevents only implantation in the uterus. Okay, so sexually transmitted diseases can be prevented by using barrier method. If you are using copper T, this will be only preventing the implantation. And the 27th question is, explain the following methods of contraception, giving one example of each. Barrier method, hormonal imbalance method, and surgical method. So barrier method, in this method, physical devices like condoms and diaphragms and cervical caps are used. And these devices will be preventing the entry of sperm in the female genital tract during copulation. And this will be acting as a barrier between them. And next is the hormonal imbalance method, and in this method specific drugs are used by female which are of two types, that is oral pill and vaginal pill. And oral pill contain hormone which stop the ovaries from releasing ovum into the fallopian tube, and these pills are also called as oral contraceptives which act by changing the hormonal balance of the body so that the eggs are not released and fertilization cannot occur. And then comes the surgical method. And in this method, a small portion of the vas difference in male and the fallopian tube in the female is surgically removed or tied. And it is called vasectomy in male and tubectomy in female. And in this case, if the vas difference in male is blocked, sperm transfer will be prevented. And if the fallopian tube in the female is blocked, the egg will not be able to reach the uterus. Thus, fertilization will not be taking place. Okay, so barrier method means it is a like condoms and diaphragms. These are physical devices which can be either used by the male or the female partner, so that it will be preventing the fusion or the meeting of the male and female gametes. And hormonal imbalance method, it is pills where the female partner should take it, and it will be altering the hormonal balance of the female so that the ovulation can be delayed. Then comes the surgical method. So the chances of reversibility is very very less, okay, because surgical method means in case of male the vas difference has been cut and tied up, in case of female the fallopian tube is cut and tied up. Okay, so surgical method, the chances or the probability of reversibility is very 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 less. And the 28th question is, name the parts labeled A, B, C, D and E. So A is oviduct or fallopian tube. And what about B? B is ovary. And C is uterus. D is cervix. And E is vagina. So these are the different parts marked. And there's a B part and C part for the question. So the B part is, where do the following functions occur? So production of an egg. So where does the production of an egg occurs? It occurs in the ovaries. And fertilization, that is the fusion of male and female gamete, take place in the fallopian tube. Then the implantation of zygote. After cell division, the zygote get implanted in the lining of uterus. And the C part of the question is, what happened to the lining of the uterus before release of the fertilized egg, and if no fertilization occur? So the lining of uterus will become thick, okay, before the fertilization. In order to welcome the baby, what happened? New layers of tissues and blood vessels and all will be formed, and the lining will become thick in order to give a cushiony effect to the baby. Okay, and if no fertilization takes place, the lining of the uterus will slowly break and it will come out through the vagina as blood and mucus. And if not fertilization is taking place, this will be happening. Now the 29th question is, describe in brief the role of testis, seminal vesicle, vas difference, ureter, prostate gland in human male reproductive system. So testes are oval shaped primary reproductive organ in male, and the function of testis is to produce sperm and male sex hormone, that is testosterone. And scrotum will be providing this optimal temperature for the formation of sperm. And seminal vesicle, they are a pair of thin-walled muscular elongated sac which secrete fluid for the nourishment of sperms. Okay, and vas difference, the sperm that is produced are carried by a long tube called as vas difference to the organ called seminal vesicle, where the sperm will be getting nourishment and they will be stored. And ureter, it is a tube that carries urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder, and in human there are two ureter, one attached to each kidney. And then comes the prostate gland. So prostate gland will be producing a fluid which is released in the urethra along with the secretion of seminal vesicle for nourishment and transportation of the sperm. Okay, so these are the different function of the different parts of the male reproductive system, and this is important. Okay, this is a direct question from the text because all the parts and their function is given in our textbook. Very important, and this is a previous year question too. Okay, different parts have been asked, so you have to go through this. Very very important. The 30th question is, what are the different methods of contraception? So there is natural method. So in this method, the main focus is to avoid the mating of sperm and ovum, and this can be achieved by avoiding the mating or involving the sexual activity from 10th to 17th day of the menstrual cycle. During this period, there are high chances of fertilization as ovulation is expected during this period. Then comes the barrier method, and in this method, the meeting of the male and female gamete is avoided by using a barrier, and these barriers are available for male as well as for female. That is condom for both male and female, diaphragm for female, and cervical cap and contraceptive sponge for female. Then comes the oral contraception. So in this method, pills are taken orally, and these pills will be containing small portion of hormone that will be blocking the egg so that the fertilization will not be taking place. And implants and surgical method, in this method, contraceptive devices like copper T or loop can be used to block the meeting of sperm and ovum. And in surgical method, the fallopian tubes are blocked in the female to stop the flow of egg, and vas deferens is blocked in men to stop the flow of sperms. Next, we are moving to the assertion and reasoning type question. And the 31st question is, the assertion given is asexual reproduction is a primitive type of reproduction, and the reason given is asexual reproduction involves only mitotic cell division. So the answer is option A, that is both assertion and reason is correct, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. So asexual reproduction, it is a primitive type of reproduction only. It mainly happens in unicellular organism and in some multicellular ones. Okay. And in asexual reproduction, we can see only mitotic division. That is, the cell will be dividing into two and that cell will be dividing into four. So we can see only mitotic division. So both assertion and reason is correct, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. Now 32nd question is, the assertion given is spores are unicellular body, and the reason given is the parent body simply breaks up into simpler pieces on maturation. So the answer is assertion is true, but reason is false. Okay, so spore, they are unicellular body, and it's not like the parent body will be simply breaking up into smaller pieces on maturation. Okay, we can see sporangia inside which the spores are seen, and when the situation or the condition is favorable, at that time the sporangia will be bursting, and wherever the spores go and fall, there are no organism will be coming. Okay, so here assertion is true, but the reason is false. 33rd question, the assertion is clones are offsprings of an organism formed by asexual reproduction. The reason given is clones have exact copies of DNA as their parent. And the answer is option B, that both assertion and reason are true, but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Okay, so clones, they are offsprings of an organism formed by asexual reproduction. Okay, and clones have exact copies of DNA as their parent. Okay, see, if like same as me, another person standing over here, same feature as mine, I call it as a clone. Okay, that is when we call it as a clone. Okay, when exactly the same person, my copy, my photocopy is standing over here, that we call as a clone. Okay, so clone, they are offspring of an organism which is formed by asexual reproduction only, and the clones, they have exact copies of DNA as their parent. Okay, both statements are correct. Okay, but we can't say the reason is a correct explanation of the assertion. That is wrong, but both the statements are correct. Now, the 34th question is, pollen grain from the carpel stick to the stigma of stamen, and the reason given is the fertilized egg cell grow inside the ovule and they become the seeds. So the answer is assertion is false, but reason is true. Okay. So pollen grain from the carpel or the pistil will be sticking to the stigma of the stamen, and reason given is the fertilized egg cell grow inside the ovule and become the seeds. That is correct, right? The fertilized egg cell will be growing inside the ovule and they'll be becoming seeds. Ovule will get converted into seed, ovary into fruit. That is correct. Okay, but the pollen grain from the pistil, is the pollen grain coming from pistil? No, the pollen grain is coming from the anther. Okay, so the assertion is wrong. Okay, it's clearly understood. The assertion is false and the reason is true. Okay, yeah. So that's all about the question, and I hope so it is clear. Yeah, thank you.